where else do I get to stand there with Saweetie? And she had like crystals everywhere, and she smelled amazing. I was like, this is fantastic. There's pictures of, my granddad holding me in his lap with like a mandolin. He started me on a mandolin first because my hands were too small for a guitar. When I was about 7, he started teaching me guitar. My uncle had this like Les Paul copy, an Electra, and it had like built-in effects in the guitar. I still have it. It's a very heavy, brash sort of version of a Les Paul Custom. And he gave me that guitar when I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I was so excited, just overwhelmed. Like I slept with it in the bed. I grew up in Alabama, so Skinner was huge. If you were learning how to play the guitar, those were the songs that you learned. The first one that I learned was Simple Man. I strummed it instead of picking the pattern out. It's supposed to be like picked out. My uncle was like, well, that's not how it goes. And I kind of like argued with him a little bit. I was like, no, that's fine, that's close enough. And my dad pulled me aside and took me back in the bedroom and was like, if you're going to come over here to learn how to play guitar, you're going to do it right. After that, I thought, okay, I'm going to really take my time, and if I'm going to learn how to play something, I'm going to figure it out the right way. My grandfather was probably my first mentor. He was a Pentecostal preacher. This is going to sound ridiculous, but he learned how to write and read from my grandmother after they got married so he could work on his sermons for church. So when I was a kid, I would go through his notebooks, and I could see him learning how to write, how to take his notes for a sermon. And this was in the 80s, so I mean, we're not talking about some sort of Charles Dickens universe. Like, this is just Alabama in the 80s. He and all of his siblings played music, so it was like these gospel, bluegrass, hillbilly songs from the beginning. A lot of this the same rhythm, that kind of flat-picked guitar rhythm. I was his only grandchild at the time, so for a long time it was just me and him. I remember hearing on the radio the Derek and the Dominoes, Layla, on classic rock radio, WKDF, out of Nashville. We had a translator station in Decatur, Alabama, so we could pick it up, even though we were 110 miles away. And I called, long distance, requested that they play that song again after I heard it, because I had the double cassette deck, like the one from Sears, and I sat next to it, like with my hand on the record button all night. And then the next morning, he had never played it. I was probably 9 years old. I called back at the radio station. I was like, I've been up all night waiting on this song. You didn't play it. He said, oh my God, kid, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'll play it now. So he played it then, and I recorded it. And he told me on the radio, that was Eric Clapton's band, Derek and the Dominoes. And so I told my parents, and they took me to the record store and bought the box set, like the remastered box set of that on cassette. And I came home and just started like eating that thing. Every day I listened over and over and over, and that led me backwards, to blues musicians. And so my grandfather took me to the record store to get the Robert Johnson recordings. There were some songs that were suggestive on the Robert Johnson stuff, and so he overdubbed, like gave me like Maxell cassette copies of all the songs that weren't like vulgar, and he said, you can listen to these, and when you're old enough, I'll give you the box set back. When I was 14 or 15, he was like, okay, I think you're old enough for this now, and I got the stuff that said squeeze my lemon or whatever. But that I became genuinely obsessed with. Like, I remember asking my music teacher in school, in this rural, white Alabama elementary school, like about Robert Johnson. And the music teacher, who was this really cool old hippie dude, was like, what the hell are you talking? Why is a third grader in Alabama asking me about a blues musician from the 20s, So he and I got to be really good friends that way. And he would call me out of class and make mixtapes and all these, like, listen to the Rolling Stones. I mean, if we're not counting, like, horny as an emotion, because, like...
Technically it is.
It
sure.
is, I think, right? It's like a secondary emotion. I was in love with Janet Jackson when I was a child. Oh. And so the first record that I ever owned, like, bought myself, was the Rhythm Nation record, and I loved it. And then I figured out there were Sly Stone samples, so I went back to Sly Stone. But still, just a masterpiece of New Jack Swing. I guess other emotions, the Peter Gabriel, In Your Eyes, hit me really hard when I was like 10, and I was very emo little 10-year-old kid crying to Peter Gabriel. The first thing that I wrote, I took some sheet music from the jazz band in high school to like a Duke Ellington thing that they were playing, and wrote my own lyrics to it. And I was probably 12, 13 years old. I remember I had like measurements. It was a very horny song. I think I remember there was a 36 and a 24 in there, so it was probably around the time of what's the rapper from Seattle that liked big butts?
Oh, Sir Mix-a-Lot?
Sir Mix-a-Lot.
There we go.
It was.
Okay.
I probably heard those measurements in that song and
Yes.
translated them, not knowing what that meant at all. And I remember like working on it in the back seat of the car. My parents were like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, this song that I'm working on." And I think they were impressed, but also I think they were freaked out a little bit. But my daughter last week came to me with a song that she is writing the first time, and so we worked on it on Zoom last night for a little while. Yeah, and it's good. It's going to be really good. She has some natural ability, and I think she enjoys it. The thing you have to do is find something that you really want to spend your time doing. And then you'll always have that, and with a little bit of luck, you can turn that into your career. And I always feel terrible for people who get in their 40s or 50s and they don't know what makes them happy. I've done a lot of stupid stuff, made a lot of big mistakes, but I've never thought, I don't know what I want out of life. That has never occurred to me. I know exactly what I want. I want to get in the bus. I want to go play, Radio City or something. I remember signing with the Drive-By Truckers. When I joined that band, they had just put out the Southern Rock Opera themselves. And I remember it got picked up by Lost Highway Records when Willie Nelson and Lucinda Williams and a lot of great artists were on that label at the time. And we played at a venue in Nashville that's gone now called the Mercy Lounge, which was in the Cannery Building on 8th Avenue, and it's right next to the railroad tracks. And I remember we were drinking champagne in the dressing room, and we'd throw the glasses out the window against the train when it came by. It didn't turn out to be the best deal just because we didn't have priority at Lost Highway. To tell you the truth, I have never had a record deal that worked out well for me. 12, 13 years ago, I just started my own label that only puts out my records, and that worked out really, really well. I would love to be able to tell everybody, don't sign a record label deal, but that's not always good advice. Your business is not a lottery ticket. It's not either you succeed or you fail. There's so much in the middle, and you can decide what it means to succeed. I remember when the Rolling Stone review for Southern Rock Opera came out, and it was like the first completely independent record that had gotten that high a review. I was excited, but I hadn't played on that record. I was excited on their behalf. We played in LA on that tour at the Troubadour, I think, and somebody wrote my playing had reminded them of Richard Lloyd, which made me very excited. Before we left to go on tour, we had a photo shoot. I had joined the band, was joining the band that day pretty much, and they wanted us to shoot on this bridge, like a railroad bridge over a river, and they talked me into getting in the river, and it was freezing cold, so I got in the water up to my chest, and then Cooley turned around to go pee on me while I was so they would get a picture of him pissing off the back of the. We were feral. I'm telling you, we were feral people. This is not acceptable behavior. But I got mad. I'm already down here free, and you're not pissing on me. I'm sorry. I was terrified of the city. I was so scared. And coming up here to do late night TV, too many people, too close to me. I'm used to just open, fields with cows in them. We were on Craig Kilborn's show, and he was not nice. He came back and said, "Are you guys the band? You guys must be the band," because we looked rough, We were like, yeah, we're the band, thank you for having us. And he goes, "Are you good?" And I was an asshole and said, "We could use a few more of these little turkey sandwiches if you got them." and he laughed. He said, "Oh, this one's quick," But I remember that happening, and that kind of broke the ice a little bit. It's a big deal, and it doesn't get bigger than the first one either, because Grammy winning so-and-so sounds great. Then they have something to say at the county fair when you're 65 and you're doing the review of all your old songs and stuff. They handed me the Grammy, and then as soon as I walked off stage, I won another one, so they just handed me the same one back, because they're like prop Grammys, they mail them to you later, So I was very nervous during the acceptance speech, so of course I forgot most everybody to thank. My favorite part of it, though, is just going. 1 year, I got stuck behind Saweetie for 7 minutes while they went back and forth to a commercial break, and I was just like standing there with Saweetie, and it was like where else do I get to stand there with Saweetie? And she had like crystals everywhere, and she smelled amazing. I was like, this is fantastic. First time I met him was at Gary Nicholson's house. It's a studio. Donnie Fritz was making a record. Donnie was an incredible songwriter, piano player, and we came over to sing on a track. John had bought Southeastern at the record store, I don't know, a few days or a week before that. I later found out, like, come home to his wife Fiona and freaked out, like, you got to listen to this record, this is amazing, you know. So that was a big deal for me. We hit it off from the start, and I think we sang harmony vocals on one of Donnie's songs together, and then just sort of got to talking about songwriting and, you know, traveling and all that kind of stuff, and wound up spending a whole lot of time together over the next few years. He was the first person that I ever saw look at the clock on stage and be upset because it was almost time for the show to end, especially at his age, in the physical condition he was in after having cancer and everything. I just remember being up next to John and him looking at the clock and going, God damn it, I don't want to quit yet. I don't know that I've ever been more afraid of anything that wasn't actually a threat to my life than I was to go on the set of the Scorsese movie. The first day I went and got a haircut and the wardrobe fitting, and then I went to the dialect coach, Tim, the dialect coach, who is like legendary dialect coach. I mean, this guy did Gangs in New York. Like, could you imagine being the dialect coach on Gangs in New York? But we sat down and he said, you should just, for the most part, just talk the way you normally talk. And then we get to this set, and there's a scene where my first wife has passed, and it's her wake, and so there are a bunch of Osage family members and tribal members there. Leo's character, Ernest, comes in, and I have to like kick him out of the house because he's dressed like Tom Mix, and he's just come back from the war and got a paycheck and cashed it and bought this crazy cowboy costume, and it's just very uncomfortable. But I remember being so scared, and this was just a rehearsal. De Niro was just covered with dog hair. He was wearing like a jumpsuit, had dog hair all over him. Turns out that he travels with like a dozen dogs. When I spoke to him the first time, I don't think he understood that this was how I actually talked, because it wasn't during a scene. It was like, you know, off camera, I was just introducing myself, and he looked at me like, and it took a few days, I think, for him to realize that this is my actual speaking voice and this is my accent. When I went to say my lines in rehearsal, nothing came, it just squeaked out. One of the other actors on set like patted me on the back and was like, man, that was so good. You sounded so upset and so restrained. And I was like, oh, I see. You don't have to do this intentionally. You just have to do it. The scene with me and Leo where we're like in each other's face and, you know, just really talking shit, like that night, that went on for hours. Once that was done, I felt almost comfortable. I thought, all right, maybe I can handle this. You know, I don't know as much about it as the professionals, but I think that I can get away with it.